My name is Frank Dalton. I'm 55 years old, born and raised in the kind of American town where folks still wave from their porches and know your dog's name better than your own. I've been a father for almost 3 decades, and I swear to you, there is no job harder, no love deeper, and no heartbreak sharper. People like to say time toughens you, that life builds armor on your bones, but let me tell you something straight. There is no armor thick enough to protect you from the pain your own child can bring. Sometimes the people you'd die for, the ones you'd hand your whole heart to without hesitation, end up being the ones who cut the deepest, even when they don't mean to, even when they're hurting too. I never imagined I'd see the day when the little girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during Christmas movies, the same girl who held my hand at her mother's funeral because she didn't want me to be alone, the girl whose tiny voice once called me Daddy, with so much trust it could have brought the strongest man to tears, would grow up to block my number on Christmas Eve. And not because of some small misunderstanding or some silly argument, but without a warning, without a conversation, without even a cold goodbye. Just blocked. 1 second I'm texting her to drive safe, and the next I'm staring at that harsh little message on my phone saying my words can't be delivered, like I'd suddenly become a stranger to my own blood. I won't pretend I handled it well. Truth is, it wrecked me in a way I didn't expect. I'm a grown man, I've buried a wife, survived layoffs, worked with busted knees in winter storms, and held myself together for my daughter's sake more times than I can count, but that night, that Christmas Eve, I felt something break in me. My house was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the warmth and left me with nothing but shadows and ticking clocks. The Christmas lights blinked on the tree, mocking the silence. The roast I cooked, her favorite, went cold on the counter. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, hopping the block with some glitch, some accidental tap of her finger. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Something bigger than a father-daughter argument. Something she was too scared or too ashamed or too manipulated to tell me. I stayed up all night. Not sleeping, not resting, just sitting there in the dim light of the living room, playing old memories in my mind like a tape stuck on rewind. Her first Christmas without her mom, her graduation, her first apartment, the day she brought home that boyfriend of hers who smiled too much and talked too slick for his own good. I kept wondering where I had failed her. What did I miss? What should I have said sooner? What should I have done differently? That house felt too damn big for one man, too quiet, too lonely. And when loneliness mixes with fear, you start to imagine every worst-case scenario possible. I was terrified, not of losing her love, not of her being angry at me, but of something happening to her while I had no way to reach her. Then morning came. The kind of gray, cold morning that doesn't feel like Christmas at all. I made breakfast out of habit, but it tasted like cardboard. I sat at the table staring at the empty chair across from me, the one she always sat in, the one where she used to tease me for overcooking bacon. My hands were wrapped around a mug of coffee I never drank, just holding it for warmth because the house felt colder than it should. And that's when it happened. A sudden heavy pounding on my front door, not a polite knock, not a neighbor dropping off cookies. No, this was desperate, urgent. The kind of knocking that hits a man straight in the chest. For a split second, I froze. My heart jumped to my throat because deep down, something in me already knew. You ever feel that eerie moment when life shifts like the entire world inhales at once? That's what it felt like. I got up, walked toward the door, and with every step my pulse got louder, heavier, like boots on pavement. When I opened the door, I swear time stopped. There she was. My daughter. My Emily. Standing on my porch with her hair tangled, her clothes wrinkled, her face streaked with dried and fresh tears. Her hands were shaking so badly she kept rubbing them together like she was freezing, even though she was wearing a thick jacket. Her lips were trembling and her eyes, God, her eyes, were swollen, red, empty in a way I had never seen before. She looked like she hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't even breathed properly in hours. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the word like it physically hurt her to say it. She took one small, broken breath and then she fell apart. Dad, please, I need you. There are moments in life that split you in half, before and after. The second she said those words, I knew that whatever had happened, whatever betrayal, whatever heartbreak, whatever nightmare she had walked through the night before, was bigger than any argument, bigger than any misunderstanding. It was something that had destroyed her, something she couldn't outrun, something that had driven her right back to the one place she swore she didn't need anymore, her father's door. And as she stood there trembling, tears falling faster than she could wipe them, something inside me shifted. All the hurt I felt from being blocked, all the anger and confusion, it didn't disappear, but it became small compared to what I saw in her eyes. My daughter wasn't just upset. She was shattered. Whatever had happened overnight had torn her world apart, and she came to me because she had nobody else to run to. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight as she cried into my chest like she used to when she was little, and scraped her knee. Only this time, it wasn't a scraped knee. This was deeper, darker, the kind of hurt that doesn't heal with a band-aid and a kiss on the forehead. As I held her, I didn't know the details yet. I didn't know the betrayal she had uncovered. I didn't know the lies she had been told. I didn't know the danger she had been dragged into. I didn't know the truth about the man she trusted. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a father-daughter moment. This was the beginning of something much bigger. This was the moment everything changed. And this is the truth about what happened before that knock. The betrayal that broke us apart. The manipulation that nearly destroyed my daughter, and the revenge that rebuilt everything we lost. This is the story of how one Christmas shattered everything, and how the very next morning brought her back to me. I carried Emily inside like she was still that little girl who used to fall asleep in the back seat after long drives. But this time, it wasn't sleep. It was exhaustion mixed with fear, panic, heartbreak, all tangled together so tightly that she could barely breathe through her cries. Her fingers dug into the back of my coat like she was holding onto the last safe place she had left in the world. I kicked the door shut and guided her toward the couch. The Christmas lights were still blinking, the room still warm from the heater, and the smell of the untouched roast still hung in the air like a reminder of the night that should have been. The night we should have spent together, laughing, eating, arguing about whether the tree leaned too far to the left like we did every year. But instead, she blocked me, and now she was here, shaking and crying like something had chased her halfway across town. I pulled a blanket around her shoulders, but she didn't stop trembling. She wasn't just upset, she was broken, and that scared me more than anything. Emily was strong, tough, independent to a fault. She never let anyone see her cry, not even me. But that morning, she looked like a woman who had the ground pulled out from under her. "Emily," I said softly, "kiddo, look at me, what's going on, what happened?" She didn't answer at first. She just sat there, squeezing her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. I sat down next to her, slow and steady, the way you approach a frightened animal. I didn't want to push her, not when she clearly felt crushed enough already. Her voice finally cracked out, barely above a whisper. "Dad, I messed up." Those words hit harder than anything, because Emily never admitted she messed up, ever. She always put on this brave face, the strong, confident, grown-up woman who didn't need anyone, not even her old man. But right then she wasn't any of that. She was scared, ashamed, and for the first time really, truly lost. I reached for her hand. "You're here," I told her, keeping my voice calm. "You're safe. Whatever happened, we'll figure it out." She nodded slowly, but her lip trembled, and she covered her face again. Her whole body shook with another wave of sobs, and all I could do was sit there and rub her back gently, trying to steady the storm inside her. And while she cried, my mind spun. Why did she block me last night? Why was she here now? Why did she look like someone had ripped her entire life apart? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but a sinking feeling settled in my gut, a feeling that had Jason's name written all over it. That boy always gave me bad vibes. Not because I'm an overprotective dad, hell, I wanted Emily to find someone who treated her right, someone who'd love her the way her mother loved me. But Jason, he wasn't that, not by a long shot. The first time I met him, he walked into my house with his nose in the air like the place was too small for his ego. He talked over Emily, bragged about his investing skills, and called me big guy like I was some clueless old-timer who didn't know a damn thing. You know how some people walk into a room and your instinct tells you this one's trouble? Yeah, that was Jason. But Emily was blind to it. She always tried to see the best in people, a trait she got from her mom. And sometimes, that trait is exactly what gets you hurt. I sat there with her while her breathing slowed a little. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket, leaving dark streaks on her cheeks from her mascara. Her face looked so tired it almost broke me. "Do you want some water?" I asked. She nodded like her neck weighed 50 pounds. I got up and walked to the kitchen, each step heavier than the last. I grabbed a glass and filled it halfway, just the way she liked it, not too cold, not too full, because she always said drinking a full glass at once made her stomach hurt. It's strange how, even in moments of crisis, a parent's instincts kick in. No matter how old your kid gets, you still want to take care of them in the small ways. When I returned, she took the glass with shaky hands and sipped slowly. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, like she was scared of what she'd see if she looked up. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" I asked gently. Her breath caught in her chest, like just thinking about it hurt. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. That sentence alone stabbed deep. Because last night she blocked me. And now I was the only place she felt safe. "Emily, why did you block me?" I asked softly, even though a part of me didn't want to know. She closed her eyes, her lashes wet. "I didn't want to, Dad. I swear I didn't. Jason, he said I needed to choose, that you were trying to poison my mind against him. He told me you hated him. He convinced me that you'd just distract me from him. He said if I wanted to build a life with him, I had to cut ties with people who did support our relationship." My jaw tightened. There it was. The control, the manipulation, the pressure. And the moment she said it, everything from the past few months clicked together like puzzle pieces I didn't want to see the picture of. Emily kept going, her voice shaking. "I was stupid. I let him talk me into things. I let him make decisions for me. And I blocked you because he was standing right there and I didn't want to fight with him again. I wanted him to be happy. I just wanted peace." Peace. The word stung. Because some people demand peace only when it means they get their way. I forced myself to keep my voice level. "So why come here now? What changed?" She swallowed hard, staring at her hands. Her next words came out strangled, like they were tearing her throat on the way out. "Because everything he told me was a lie." She lifted her head slowly, and for the first time since she arrived, our eyes met. And in her eyes, I saw devastation. "He drained my savings, Dad." My heart dropped. "He took everything, all of it. My emergency fund, the money Mom left me, the bonus I got last month, everything." I felt my chest tighten so sharply it almost hurt to breathe. "He told me he was investing it for us," she continued, choking on the words. "He promised we were building a future together, but last night he disappeared. His phone switched off. His apartment was empty when I went there this morning. Completely empty, like he'd never even lived there." She began shaking again, her voice cracking into sobs. He used me for months, and I never listened to you. I thought I knew him. I thought he loved me. And I blocked you on Christmas Eve because he told me to. And now I don't have anything. I don't even have $1 left in my account." My hands curled into fists without me realizing. Every muscle in my body tensed. My blood felt hot, angry, protective, like a fire spreading through my veins. Jason didn't just break her heart. He humiliated her, manipulated her, destroyed her trust, stole her future. And he made her turn against her own father. But I didn't let anger show on my face. Not yet. Not while she was falling apart in front of me. I slid closer and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. She collapsed against me again, crying into my shirt like she used to when she scraped her knee as a kid. "Emily, listen to me," I said quietly but firmly. "You didn't lose everything." "Yes, I did," she sobbed. "He took everything." "He didn't take me," I whispered. She froze for a moment, her breath catching. "I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere, you hear me?" She nodded slowly, clinging to me like she was terrified I might disappear too. But while I held her, something hardened inside me. Something sharp, something cold. Because as much as I wanted to comfort her, as much as I wanted to fix everything, there was a darker truth brewing beneath the surface. A truth I didn't dare say out loud yet. Jason thought he could take everything from my daughter and just walk away. He thought he could drain her clean, break her spirit, turn her against her own father, and vanish like smoke on a cold morning. No. Not a chance. Not while I was still breathing. I held her tighter, staring past her at the empty space on the wall, my mind already turning, planning, calculating. Emily didn't know it yet. But this Christmas, she wasn't the only one who'd been pushed too far. And Jason, he was about to learn exactly what happens when a father decides it's time for someone to pay. I pulled the blanket tighter around Emily's shoulders, not because the house was cold, but because she was. Her whole body felt like it was trembling from the inside out, the aftershocks of a storm that hadn't finished passing yet. She held the warm tea with both hands like she was afraid it might slip away too, just like everything else had. And me? I just sat close enough so she knew she wasn't alone, but not close enough to make her feel cornered. When your child comes home broken, you don't ask them why they're shattered. You hold the pieces until they start talking. She stared into that tea for a long moment, and I could hear her breathing, struggling to find a steady rhythm. I didn't rush her. I didn't say a damn thing. Sometimes silence is the only invitation someone needs. Finally, she whispered, "Dad, I'm sorry I blocked you." Those words didn't come out lightly. They came out like they'd been fighting their way through guilt and regret all night long. I felt that apology in my bones. Because no matter how grown your kid gets when they apologize with that kind of pain in their voice, you feel it as a father. Something inside you tightens, protective and hurt all at once. I kept my voice soft, steady. "Emily, just tell me why." Her eyes squeezed shut like she was bracing for impact. And then, with this small, broken sigh, she said the name I already knew was behind everything. It was Jason. Just hearing it made something sharp twist inside me. Jason, the guy who walked around like he was too good for oxygen. The guy who looked at everyone like they were stepping stones for his next big idea. I always felt there was something wrong behind his smile, too polished, too rehearsed, like a mask glued on with cheap glue. But Emily, she saw none of that. Or maybe she did, but she wanted so badly to believe in love again that she ignored the warning signs. She'd been lonely for years. Losing her mom young carved out this empty space inside her, and she tried filling it with anything that felt warm, even if the warmth came from a fire that would eventually burn her. From the moment Emily brought Jason over, I tried giving him a fair shot. I'm old school. You treat my daughter right, I treat you right. But he made that impossible with the way he strutted into my house like he owned the place. Not a single thank you, not a single compliment, not even a polite comment about the roast I'd spent hours cooking. He just sat at my table talking like he was on some investment webinar. He told me about crypto, about flipping houses he didn't even own, about easy returns and guaranteed profits. The only thing guaranteed was that he could talk for 20 minutes without breathing. But even with all that nonsense, I stayed patient. Emily kept smiling at him like he was her bright future wrapped in a button-down shirt. Her happiness mattered more than my instincts. Until one night, and I'll never forget this because it was the same night I cleaned out the garage. Emily went to the kitchen to grab dessert. Jason leaned back in his chair, looked at me with this smirk that wasn't a smirk, more like a warning dressed as arrogance, and said, "You know, Frank, once Emily and I get married, she won't need this place anymore. She's ready for a real home." A real home. I built this house with my own 2 hands after my wife died. I fixed every pipe, laid every tile, painted every wall. Emily took her first steps in the living room. She baked cookies with her mom in the kitchen. We cried together on the staircase the night we found her mom's old scarf in a box we forgot existed. There was more life in these walls than Jason had in his entire body. And there he was, sitting in my chair, dismissing it like it was worthless. I should have told Emily right then, should have warned her, should have told her to run. But she looked so happy carrying that damn pie back into the room. I kept quiet. Because trying to protect someone sometimes feels the same as hurting them, and I didn't know which way was the right one. Now, listening to her, I realized that silence gave Jason the opening he needed. Emily's fingers tightened around her cup. Her voice cracked as she said, He told me you didn't approve of him, that you hated him, that you were jealous because he could give me a better life." Jealous, me? The man who'd worked his fingers raw for decades so she could go to college debt-free. The man who skipped lunches so she could have Christmas gifts big enough to make her eyes sparkle. Jealous of a guy who probably didn't even know how to change a tire. But Jason didn't care about truth. He cared about control. Emily kept talking, her voice trembling more with each word. He said you thought he was using me, that you told people he was a parasite." I stared at her stunned. I had never said that out loud. I thought it. Lord, I thought it every time he opened his mouth. But I never mentioned it to anyone, not even my buddies at work. That meant Jason was projecting his own guilt onto me, twisting reality so hard she didn't know where the floor was anymore. She wiped a tear with her sleeve and continued. He said if I wanted a life with him, I needed to choose. That I had to cut out anyone who didn't support our relationship. Of course he did. Textbook manipulation. Isolate the victim, control their environment, make them dependent. "And I chose wrong," she whispered, her voice cracking with shame so deep it made my chest ache. I took her hand gently. "Emily, you're here now, that's what matters." But she shook her head hard, another tear slipping out. "No, Dad, that's not everything. Something else happened, something big." My stomach tightened. I could feel the next blow coming, but I wasn't ready for it, not even close. Emily looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. "Last night, I learned who Jason really is." I waited. "He's not who I thought he was," she whispered. And then she told me everything. Everything she'd been hiding. Everything he'd been doing. Everything he'd taken. And everything she lost. She started from the beginning, back to the first red flag she ignored. The lies he told her about his job. Turns out he wasn't some deal-making mastermind. He was fired months ago and pretending. The investments he bragged about, all fake screenshots and jargon he memorized from videos online. The money he said they were saving together. Actually her money, all her money, every penny she trusted him with. Her voice dropped even lower as she revealed the part that nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. "Dad, he didn't just drain my savings." She swallowed, her lip trembling violently. "He drained Mom's inheritance. My wife's legacy. The money she set aside from her life insurance. The money she made me promise would help Emily someday. Money that was built from love, sacrifice, and a life cut short. Gone. Just gone. Cleaned out by a man who smiled in my face while robbing my daughter blind." Emily's voice broke completely as she finished. And last night when I confronted him, he disappeared, just vanished. His apartment was empty this morning, everything gone, like he never existed. The room felt colder. My heartbeat felt louder. Something slow and dark uncoiled inside me, not rage exactly, but something deeper, calmer, scarier. The kind of anger that doesn't shout, the kind that calculates. Jason thought he was clever. He thought he could manipulate my daughter, drain her future, make her cut ties with her own father, and then slip away into thin air like a ghost. But ghosts don't stay hidden forever. Emily took a shaky breath, resting her forehead against my shoulder. Dad, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to fix any of this. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling her collapse against me like her last defense had finally fallen. I kissed the top of her head like I used to when she scraped her knee and cried on my lap. You're home, I said quietly. That's step one. She nodded, tears soaking into my shirt. But inside me, a fire was already spreading. Slow, controlled, dangerous. Because Jason may have tricked Emily. He may have fooled her. He may have drained her clean and walked away laughing. But he forgot one thing. She wasn't alone. She had a father who had spent 55 years learning how to endure storms. And how to fight back when the wrong person tried to take what mattered. And now, it was my turn. My turn to peel off Jason's mask. My turn to show him who he was messing with. And my turn to make him regret ever stepping into my daughter's life. Emily didn't speak for a few seconds after that, as if she needed to gather every broken shard of strength left inside her before she could continue. And when she finally inhaled, it was the kind of breath people take when they're about to drag a buried memory up to the surface, slow, trembling, pulled from somewhere deep in the chest. She wiped her cheeks again, though the tears kept coming, tracing the same wet path as if her face had given up trying to stay strong. Dad, she whispered, there's something else, something that happened before last night. Her voice trembled like a cracked bell, and for a moment she stared at the floor like the truth lived there, hiding between the tiles. She said that last week, right when the Christmas decorations were lighting up every street in town, when couples were posting cheesy photos in front of fireplaces and kids were writing letters to Santa. Jason had come home with that fake warmth he always put on when he wanted something. She remembered he kissed her forehead, called her baby, held her hands in his big showy way, and started talking about the future, their future, a future he painted with bright colors and perfect illusions, the kind of fantasy a young woman in love wants to believe even if her instincts are whispering that something doesn't feel right. He told her he had a surprise, a big one, something that would make this Christmas the most unforgettable one of her life. He said he had found a townhouse, a beautiful modern place, the kind of home he claimed she deserved, and that he was buying it under both their names because, according to him, if we're building a life together, everything should belong to both of us. As she spoke, I could almost picture it, the way he must have looked at her, how he leaned forward with those hungry eyes disguised as affection, selling dreams like a street magician sells illusions. I could imagine her excitement, too, the way her heart must have lifted thinking her life was finally stabilizing, finally moving towards something warm, safe, planned. He showed me pictures, she said, her hands gripping the blanket tighter. He showed me documents, contracts, numbers. It all looked so real. Her voice cracked on that word, real, because now she knew how unreal it all was. I felt something sharp twist inside me, a cold anger that slid up my spine like a blade made of ice. Jason didn't just lie to her. He used the hope she carried, the hope I'd watched her fight to rebuild after losing her mother, after struggling through nights when she thought she had no one left, and to use that hope against her. That wasn't just manipulation, that was cruelty dressed as love. Then she told me that he asked for her savings, not a part of it, not a contribution. All of it, every single dollar she had worked for, every paycheck she saved, every overtime shift, every holiday bonus she tucked away, every bit of security she'd been building for 8 long years. He said he needed it for the down payment, but only temporarily. He told her the bank needed certain liquidity proofs. Some official-sounding nonsense he knew she wouldn't question because she trusted him. Trusted him so much that she handed over her financial life into his hands. And when I asked quietly, trying not to show the storm inside me, "Emily, you gave him everything," she nodded, her shame so heavy it seemed to weigh down her entire body. But I didn't blame her. I blamed him. I blamed his manipulative charm, his slick lies, the way he had crawled into her trust like a parasite looking for a warm place to feed. My anger throbbed in my pulse, not rage for the sake of it, but a protective fury only a father understands, the kind that comes when someone takes advantage of your child's heart. But she wasn't finished, not even close. She told me that last night something felt off. Jason was packing around, talking fast, ignoring her questions, brushing her off with that fake confidence he always used when he was hiding something. He claimed he was going to meet the realtor to sign the final papers before Christmas. But for the first time, she said his voice didn't sound like conviction. It sounded like panic disguised as urgency. So when he left, she got in her car and followed him. I leaned forward as she described it, because even before she reached the conclusion, I already knew where this was going. Men like Jason always leave patterns like muddy footprints. They always slip, always reveal who they really are when they think no one's watching. Emily's voice shook harder as she said that Jason didn't drive toward any realtor's office. No business district. No agency. Instead, he drove to a bar, a cheap, dim, noisy place on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where lies and last chances go to rot. She parked, walked inside, and there he was, sitting at a round table with another woman. A woman sitting far too close for someone signing papers. A woman who leaned into him like she already knew his promises were empty but still enjoyed the attention. They were laughing, drinking, touching. And when the woman kissed him, Emily saw it. He didn't pull away, didn't even flinch. He kissed her back like he'd done it 100 times before. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. The room around me went quiet, heavy, tight. She continued, and each word she spoke sounded like she was reliving the moment standing there, watching the man she loved betray her without a hint of guilt. She said she walked up to them, her heart pounding, tears burning the back of her eyes, demanding to know what was happening. And Jason, with that smirk he always hid behind false charm, looked at her without even pretending to feel remorse. He laughed in her face, called her gullible, called her useful. Said the savings she gave him were an investment in his freedom. Said he never planned a future with her. He planned to use her until he didn't need her anymore. She told me her legs nearly gave out when he said it. And then he confessed something else, something that made my blood turn into molten fire. He told her he was the one who blocked my number from her phone. He told her he didn't want me interfering. He told her he needed her isolated. This wasn't just a bad boyfriend. This was a predator with a smile and expensive cologne. Emily said that when she tried asking for her money back, he leaned back, spread his arms like he was some kind of king, and told her she'd never see a single dollar again. He said if she tried anything, he'd claim she gave it willingly, that she had gifted him the money as a partner. He told her to get out because she was ruining his night. When she said that, her face finally collapsed, and she cried openly, the kind of cry that comes from deep wounds. Not the kind that sits on the surface, but the kind that cracks the soul underneath. "So I left Dad," she whispered. "I sat in my car and cried for hours. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know where to go. I felt stupid. I felt used. I felt like I lost everything." She took a shaky breath. "And in the end, I came here because you're the only person who's ever loved me without wanting anything back." I pulled her into my arms. And in that moment, as I held her and felt her body shake with every sob, something inside me hardened, something sharp, cold, and unbreakable. I made a promise to myself. A silent oath carved straight into my bones. Jason would regret every lie he told, every tear he caused, every dollar he stole, and every second he manipulated the daughter I raised with every ounce of love I had left in me. Not through violence, not through reckless revenge. No, through truth, through exposure, through consequences so precise, so devastating that his entire world would fold in on itself, piece by piece, until he was left standing in the ruins he built with his own lies. And I already knew where to begin. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat in the old armchair beside the living room window, the same chair I used to sit in when Emily was a toddler and refused to sleep unless she knew I was nearby. And I watched the sky slowly shift from black to blue to the color of cold winter morning. My body was tired, but something inside me had snapped into a clarity sharper than any rest could give. It wasn't anger anymore, not the wild fire I felt earlier, and it wasn't heartbreak, though that pulsed quietly beneath everything like an old wound reopening. No, what filled me now was something older, heavier, stronger. The part of me that had been silent for years, buried under routine and grief and the quiet loneliness of a man who had lost his wife too soon, had risen again. The protector, the builder. The father who had once worked 3 jobs while sleeping 4 hours a night, just to make sure Emily had school supplies and a birthday cake and shoes without holes. The man who had carried both a lunchbox and a diaper bag because life had demanded he be 2 people at once. Mother and father, guardian and comfort, shield and sanctuary. That man woke up again. Emily was wrapped in a blanket on the couch, exhausted from all the crying, her eyelashes stuck together from the dried tears, her breathing soft and uneven. I didn't want to disturb her, but I needed information, needed direction, needed something to hold on to before this entire situation turned into a storm I couldn't navigate. So I leaned forward slightly and spoke in the calmest voice I could manage, a voice I used to use when she was little and had nightmares. "Emily," I said, barely loud enough to carry through the room. Her eyes fluttered open, swollen and tired but focused on my face. "Show me the documents he gave you." For a moment she looked confused, as if the idea of even touching those papers again might make the reality crash down on her even harder. "Dad, they're probably fake," she whispered. I nodded slowly, understanding her fear, but lies leave fingerprints and I needed to see them. "Fake or not," I told her, "they'll tell me who he really is." Something inside her softened at that, maybe trust, maybe desperation, maybe a part of her that remembered I had always been the one person she could fall back on. She reached into her purse, her hands trembling slightly, and pulled out a folder. Even before she handed it to me, I felt a strange tingling at the base of my skull. An instinct older than reason. The same instinct that once warned me just seconds before a load of unstable lumber collapsed on a site. The same instinct that told me when a contractor was lying about measurements. The same instinct that had kept me and Emily alive through years of struggle. I took the folder and placed it on the table. When I opened it, I spread the papers out like a deck of bad cards. And when I looked at them, really looked, I almost laughed out loud. Not because any of it was funny, but because of how insultingly amateur the entire operation was. The margins were wrong. The numbers didn't align in places any legitimate contract requires precision. The signatures were inconsistent, shaky attempts to look professional, but all done with the same pen, same pressure, same hand. The fonts were mismatched. The address he listed wasn't just incorrect, it was for a building that didn't even exist. And the realtor's name, which should be the most consistent part of any legal document, was spelled 2 different ways. Not just once, but 3 times. This wasn't incompetence. This was carelessness born from arrogance, the arrogance of a man who thought Emily wouldn't look closely, wouldn't question him, wouldn't know better. A man who underestimated her because he saw her kindness as stupidity. A man who thought he could steal from her and walk away untouched. This wasn't a plan. This was a scam stitched together by a coward who believed charm, was the same thing as intelligence. I tapped the corner of one of the papers, the edge rough where the printer had jammed slightly, another sign of laziness rather than deception. "Emily," I said, lifting my eyes to hers, "he forged these." She stared at me, her face pale. "You're sure?" I nodded once. "I've seen real contracts. I've signed them, negotiated them, fought over them, lived by them. This," I tapped the papers again, "is printed nonsense." She pressed her palms over her face, shaking her head slowly as if each piece of truth made her stomach twist. "I can't believe I didn't see it," she whispered through her hands. I leaned closer, my voice softer than it had been all night. "Don't blame yourself. Good people trust. Bad people exploit that trust. You weren't wrong for believing someone you loved. He was wrong for using that love as a weapon." She lowered her hands, her eyes red but a little steadier. Then I noticed something. On the back of one of the draft pages, part of a logo had bled through from a previous print. It was faint but not faint enough to hide, and just beneath it a number. Not a realtor's office number, not a business line. No, this was something else entirely. A private line, a contact. My stomach dropped in a cold, sinking way. I recognized the type of number, not because I ever used one, but because in construction, you hear stories. Guys working paycheck to paycheck, sometimes borrowing from the wrong people out of desperation. Men whose debts didn't come with late fees, they came with threats. "Emily," I said, turning the page toward her, "this isn't a realtor." She leaned forward, confused at first, but when she saw the logo more clearly, her breath hitched. "What is it?" "It's a loan shark." The words seemed to freeze time. Her eyes widened slowly, fear rippling across her face in a way that made my heart clench. Because this changed everything. This wasn't just about Jason stealing money. This wasn't about a fake townhouse or lies or betrayal. This meant Jason owed money to someone dangerous. Someone who didn't care about emotions or relationships or dignity. Someone who wanted their cash back regardless of the damage done along the way. And if Jason used Emily's savings to pay them off, then he hadn't just stolen from her. He had sacrificed her. He had thrown her to the wolves to save himself. Men who owe money to the wrong people always leave footprints behind them, messy ones, panicked ones, and they always slip up because desperation makes people sloppy. Jason had slipped up by leaving that number on a printed page. A stupid mistake, a fatal one for him. I didn't need to tell Emily what came next. I didn't need to explain the instinct rising inside me, the clear path forming in my mind, the plan assembling itself piece by piece as if I had been preparing for this moment my whole life. I stood slowly, grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, and slid my arms through the sleeves. "Let's go," I said. Emily blinked, startled. "Where?" I looked her straight in the eyes, and for the first time since the night began, she saw certainty in me, not anger, not fear, not confusion. Purpose. Steel. A father stepping into a battlefield he never asked for but would walk through willingly if it meant protecting his child. "To get your money back," I said. And I meant every word. I've spent most of my life in parts of the city people pretend don't exist. The alleys where delivery trucks double park because no one cares. The corners where men gather with paper cups and broken dreams. The blocks where the buildings lean so far in different directions it looks like they're arguing. So when Emily and I drove across town that morning, heading toward a neighborhood I hadn't visited in years, I knew exactly what kind of place we were walking into. And yet, it hit differently this time. Maybe because this wasn't about a job or a late payment or a contractor dispute. This was about my daughter's life, her savings, her dignity, her trust. Every mile felt heavier. Emily sat beside me in the passenger seat, staring out the window with her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her heart together. I wanted to tell her it'd be okay, that she'd get every dollar back. That justice was guaranteed like sunrise, but I'm not the kind of man who offers empty promises. I only promise what I intend to deliver. So I didn't speak, didn't reassure. I just drove, focused and silent, like a man tracing the outline of a battle he's already committed to fighting. We turned down a street where the sidewalks were cracked like old bones, and the streetlights flickered as if they were tired of lighting up the same repeating misery. On the right stood a row of storefronts, most of them closed, their windows covered with cardboard or metal grates. And there, squeezed between a pawn shop and a rundown laundromat that had only 3 working machines, was the place we came for. A small, grimy office with a peeling sign that read, Northland Financial Group. Fancy name, corporate ring to it, the kind of name you'd expect on a glass building downtown, not slapped on a decaying storefront where the paint curled off like old skin. But I knew places like this. I'd seen enough of them during my construction days, loan offices that weren't really loan offices, financial services that didn't offer a single legal service, businesses that claimed to give people help, but instead dug claws into them until they bled. "Dad, are you sure?" Emily whispered, her voice tiny, fragile. "Stay in the truck," I said gently. "Lock the doors, I won't be long." She nodded, though worry clouded her eyes. She trusted me, and that made me stand a little taller as I stepped out of the truck and into the cold air. Inside, the office smelled like old carpet and something sour underneath. A single fluorescent light flickered near the ceiling, buzzing like an angry bee. Behind a scratched desk sat a man in his 40s, slick-back hair, cheap suit, tie loosened like he was already exhausted with the day despite the sun not even reaching full height yet. When he looked up at me, he didn't look surprised. Men like him don't get surprised. They see too much of the same thing. Too many broken people walking through the door with fear in their eyes. "You lost?" he asked, his voice carrying the bored tone of someone who stopped caring a long time ago. "No," I said, stepping forward with calm certainty. "I'm here about a guy named Jason Wells." He didn't react big, no dramatic gasp, no denial, just a small flicker in his eyebrows, the quickest little lift before he hid it behind a smirk. That was enough for me. Recognition. Bingo. "What about him?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, trying to play it cool. "He owes you money," I said simply. "A lot, and he paid you recently." His eyes sharpened a bit and that smirk changed shape. "Who are you?" I looked him dead in the face. "His girlfriend's father." He gave a low whistle and grinned. "Ah, the pretty one, shame." My jaw tightened so hard I felt a pulse of pain shoot down the side of my neck. He said it casually, like Emily was nothing more than a detail in a transaction. My daughter, my kid, being reduced to a description by a man who didn't even know her. It made something boil inside me, but I didn't show it. Not yet. Rage is a tool, not a reaction. You use it strategically or it uses you. "What did he owe you?" I asked. The man shrugged, tapping a pen against a worn ledger book. "Tens of thousands, gambling, lies, same story every week around here." He said it like he was talking about the weather or last night's sports game. People like him see addicts as walking ATMs, nothing more. "Did he pay in full?" I asked. He smirked again, "Mostly, enough to keep us off his back." "And he used my daughter's money," I said, voice low, controlled but carrying an edge. He shrugged again, this time with more arrogance. "Voluntary payments aren't my business." I stepped closer to the desk, not threatening, not loud but deliberate. Close enough that he had to tilt his chin up just slightly to keep eye contact. Men like him hate that, being forced to reposition themselves. It knocks them off balance more than a shove ever could. "Listen," I said quietly, "you and I both know he didn't earn that money legally, and you also know you accepted stolen funds." The smirk vanished, replaced by something tighter, more cautious. This wasn't about sympathy or morality, this was about consequences. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about the kind of trouble paperwork could bring. "You accusing me of a crime?" he asked, voice brittle. "I'm stating a fact," I replied evenly. "And you know what happens when stolen money passes through a business. Investigations, audits, freezing of accounts. People asking questions you don't want to answer. He didn't blink, didn't breathe for a second. His face shifted just slightly, a small twitch near his temple. That was the crack, the opening I needed. "What do you want, old man?" he finally muttered, annoyance and fear mixing in his tone. "I want proof of payment," I said. "Every receipt, every transaction record, everything that shows exactly what he gave you and when. And I want a signed statement that Jason Wells paid with funds that did not belong to him." His eyebrows shot up. "Why the hell would you need that?" "Because," I said, my voice calm as a steady river, "I plan to make sure he never scams anyone else again." For a moment he studied me, really studied me, like he was trying to decide whether I was bluffing or whether I meant every word. And in my face he must have seen something, the kind of conviction you can't fake. A man who didn't come here for threats or drama, a man who came for truth. After a long, reluctant breath, he pushed back from his desk. "Wait here." The back room door shut behind him. I didn't sit. I didn't move. I stood there with my hands at my sides, my jaw set, waiting like a man who already knew the outcome. 5 minutes later, he returned with a thin file folder. He held it out with a stiff arm, no smirk, no attitude now, just a man wanting me gone. "You didn't get this from me," he said. "I didn't get anything," I replied. I took the folder, turned and walked out. The cold air hit my face first, then the sound of the truck engine running, Emily watching me through the window with hope and fear tangled together in her eyes. As I climbed back into the truck and handed her the file, something inside me shifted, something subtle but powerful, like the first domino tipping over in a chain reaction. Justice wasn't just possible. It had begun. When I got back into the truck, the weight of the file in my hands felt heavier than anything I'd carried in years. Not because it was thick or full of papers, but because every page inside it represented a truth my daughter wasn't prepared to hear. Emily stared at the folder like it was a bomb that could go off at any second. Her voice trembled when she finally asked, "Dad, what did you do?" I took a breath, kept my eyes on the cracked windshield and said, "Something you should have never had to do yourself." I didn't look at her yet because if I did, I knew I'd see pain in her eyes, pain I wasn't ready to face. I turned the key, the engine rumbled to life, and I added quietly, "Hold on tight." The drive across town felt like moving through a storm that hadn't broken open yet. The sky was gray, the streets were empty, and everything seemed too still, like the air itself was holding its breath. Emily kept her arms wrapped around herself, staring out the window, trying to prepare for something she couldn't fully imagine. Jason's apartment complex came into view, a modern building with clean walls and big windows, the kind of place a man rents when he wants to look successful without actually being successful. I had only been there twice before, once for a quick dinner he burned, and once to drop off something Emily forgot. Both times, he acted like my boots were tracking dirt across some holy carpet. Emily's breathing picked up the moment I pulled into the parking lot. "Dad," she whispered, "what if he's home?" "That's the point," I said, turning off the engine. "He needs to see what he broke, and he needs to see you're not alone anymore." Her eyes glistened, but she swallowed hard and nodded. She trusted me. That meant more than she knew. We walked together toward the stairwell, each step echoing off the concrete walls. I could feel her fear, her shame, her anger, all of it moving with her like shadows she couldn't outrun. When we reached the door, I didn't hesitate. I lifted my hand and knocked. Not a gentle knock, not a hopeful one, a controlled, heavy knock. The kind that carries truth behind it. The kind that says, "You're done hiding." For a moment, nothing happened. Then I heard shuffling inside, a muffled curse, and finally the sound of a lock turning. The door cracked open. Jason stood there, hair sticking up like he just rolled out of bed, wearing sweatpants that looked more like they were glued to him than worn. His face showed confusion at first, then shock, then something close to panic the second he saw me. But when his eyes shifted past me and landed on Emily, He turned pale, like all the blood he'd stolen drained out of him at once. "W, what are you two doing here?" he stuttered, his hand tightening on the door as if he might slam it shut. I didn't give him the chance. I pushed the door open with my shoulder, walking in like I owned the place, and in a way I did. Because every piece of furniture in that apartment, every rug, every gadget, every fancy lamp, it was all bought with the money he drained from my daughter. "Frank, you can't just..." "Sit down," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Sit down." This time he listened. Not because I yelled, I didn't have to. There's a tone a father gets when he's done being polite, when mistakes turn into choices and choices turn into consequences. Jason felt that tone, and he sat right down like gravity doubled. Emily stepped inside behind me, her arms crossed, her face pale but determined. I saw her legs trembling for a moment, but she didn't back down. She didn't look away. She was stronger than she believed she was. I placed the file on the coffee table right in front of Jason. The thud it made was small, but in that dead silent room, it sounded like a gavel slamming in a courtroom. "You know what this is?" I asked. Jason stared at it, then at me, then at Emily. His eyes darted between us like a man searching for a lie to hide behind. "How did you? What is that?" "I talked to the men you owe money to," I said. "Turns out they're a hell of a lot more honest than you." His lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Then finally, "Frank, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand." I leaned forward slightly. "I understand you forged documents in her name. I understand you transferred her savings behind her back. I understand you used her as a shield while you dug yourself deeper into debt with men who could have hurt her, or worse." Emily's voice cracked when she spoke. "Jason, you lied to me. For months, you told me we were buying a house. You told me you were saving for our future, and you were gambling behind my back." Jason wiped at his face with the back of his hand, trying to force out tears that didn't belong to any real emotion. "Emily, baby, listen, I can explain. I made a mistake, okay? Everyone makes mistakes." I slammed my hand down on the table. The sound echoed through the apartment like a warning shot. Jason jumped so hard you'd think the floor shook. "Stop talking," I said. "Calm, clear, no shouting, just final." He shut his mouth. "You forged my daughter's signature," I said, lowering my voice. "You drained her life savings. You blocked my number on her phone so she couldn't talk to me. And when she confronted you, you mocked her. You humiliated her." He stammered out, I didn't mean." Emily cut him off, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. "No, you didn't love me, Jason. You loved what I could give you." He blinked, and I swear the moment he realized she wasn't protecting him anymore, his spine folded in on itself. He looked smaller, weaker, exposed. "Frank, come on," he said, turning to me. "Let be men here, you know how things go sometimes." I stepped closer, just enough to let him feel the weight of what was coming. "I know exactly how things go, and I know men like you don't stop until someone forces you to." He froze, eyes wide. "We're not here to argue," I said. "We're not here for apologies, we're here for one thing." He swallowed. "What?" "You're going to return every dollar you stole." His face twisted. I can't, I don't have that kind of money anymore." I cut in. "Then sell your car, sell your watches, sell every toy you bought to pretend you were someone, because you have 1 week." "1 week," he squeaked, voice cracking. And if I do." I leaned in close enough that he could smell the truth on my breath. "Then I go to the police, with the documents, with the receipts, with the statement, with your gambling history, and when they lock you up, you'll find out real fast that prison isn't a good place for a man who cries when confronted by a 55-year-old construction worker." He swallowed hard, his throat clicked, his hand shook. "Get to work," I said. "Your time starts now." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I opened the door and walked out. And for the first time in months, Emily walked out beside me with her head raised high, her shoulders straight, and her dignity no longer in the hands of a man who didn't deserve even her shadow. She didn't look back. Neither did I. The days that followed were some of the quietest, heaviest days I'd lived through in a long time. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace, but the kind that settles into a house like fog, turning every room into a place where echoes feel too loud and footsteps feel too sharp. Emily barely spoke for the next 3 days, not because she was angry at me or at the world, but because she was grieving something she didn't have the words for yet. People underestimate the kind of pain that comes from betrayal. Most folks think it's about the money, the lies, the manipulation, but it's more than that. It's the way your heart learns to distrust itself. It's the way you start questioning your own judgment, wondering how you miss the signs, how you let someone climb so close to your chest only to realize they were holding a knife the whole time. Betrayal is its own kind of funeral. You don't just lose the person. You lose the dreams you built with them, the future you imagined, the person you were before the truth hit you like a brick wall. I didn't push her to talk. I didn't force questions or advice or long speeches about lessons learned. I just stayed close enough for her to feel safe but far enough for her to breathe. Every morning I made breakfast, eggs the way she likes, toast a little extra crisp, coffee with too much sugar because she never learned to like it the way adults pretend they do. I didn't ask if she wanted it. I just put it on the counter quietly because sometimes being cared for without being asked is the gentlest form of love. Every afternoon I knocked softly on her door to check on her, not with lectures, not with pep talks, but just to let her know I was there. A simple "you good, kid" from the hallway, a quiet "I'm here if you need anything." I never went in unless she invited me. Grief needs space. And every night before I went to bed, I tapped lightly on her door and said, "You're not alone." 4 simple words, but I could tell she held onto them the way a drowning person holds onto a rope. On the 4th morning, something was different. I felt it before I even saw her, like the air had shifted just slightly, like a storm that had passed left the sky still gray but clearing at the edges. I was at the stove making pancakes, not the boxed kind but the recipe her mother used to make, when I heard her soft footsteps behind me. She walked into the kitchen slowly, her hair pulled back, her eyes still puffy from nights of quiet crying, but there was something steadier in her expression, something that hadn't been there before. She stood by the counter for a moment, fingers tapping against the wood, and finally said in a small voice, "Dad, can I ask you something?" I turned off the stove, wiped my hands on a towel and faced her. "Anything," I said, and I meant it. She took a breath like she was trying to gather pieces of herself that had been scattered. "Do you think love makes people stupid?" she asked, her voice trembling in a way that broke my heart. I walked toward her slowly, shaking my head. "No, sweetheart, love doesn't make people stupid." I paused, searching for the right words, not the pretty ones, not the comforting ones, but the true ones. Love makes good people hopeful, and hope, it blinds you to the darkness in others. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. You saw the best in him, not because you were naive, but because you were kind. That's not a weakness. That's your strength. She looked down, her eyes filling again. "I just feel so stupid," she whispered. "You're not," I said softly. "You were kind, you were trusting. He took advantage of that. That's on him, not you." And for the first time in days, days that felt like weeks, her lips curved into a small, tired smile. Not a full smile, not a healed smile, but the first flicker of one. A spark. And sometimes a spark is all you need to know the fire inside someone isn't gone, just dimmed. I turned back to the stove, poured another ladle of batter, and for the first time since the confrontation I felt something lift in my chest, something light and warm. Maybe relief, maybe hope. That's when my phone buzzed on the counter. At first I didn't pay attention. Probably a work message, maybe a reminder, maybe a spam call trying to sell me a warranty for a truck that had been paid off for 15 years. But something about the timing, the quiet moment, the fragile peace in the room made me reach for it. I picked up the phone, looked at the screen, and felt my entire body tighten. It was Jason. A text short. "I have the money." Those 4 words burned hotter than the skillet behind me. Not because I wanted the money back, money comes and goes, but because it meant he understood something I never had to say out loud. His time was up. His excuses were done. His show was over. I stared at the message for a long moment, and when I finally lifted my eyes, Emily was watching me. Not scared, not confused, just waiting. And that's when I realized the aftermath wasn't over. It was just starting to shift into something new. Something heavier. Something necessary. Because money wasn't the end of this. It was only the beginning of the reckoning. The morning we met Jason again felt strangely quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. Emily didn't say much during the drive, and I didn't push her. Sometimes silence tells you more than words ever could. She sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes focused on the passing streets, her expression calm, almost too calm. The kind of calm people wear when they're standing on the edge of something heavy and choosing not to fall apart. We chose the same coffee shop Jason used to drag her to, the same place he once leaned back in his chair like he owned the world and bragged about future investments, big opportunities, major deals. I remember sitting across from him once, watching him talk like a man who believed that confidence was the same as character. Funny how life circles back. The same table, the same chairs, the same smell of roasted beans, but everything else was different now. The illusion was gone. The mask had fallen. And the boy who walked in to meet us wasn't the same Jason who once strutted through the door with fake swagger and borrowed charm. When he showed up, he didn't have that spring in his step anymore. His shoulders slouched, his hair unstyled, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He looked older, smaller, like life had squeezed the arrogance out of him. The moment he spotted us, he hesitated just a flicker before forcing himself forward. He sat down without waiting to be asked, his eyes darting between us. Emily didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft clattering of cups from the counter and the faint hum of conversation around us. People living their normal lives, unaware of the weight suffocating the 3 of us at that small corner table. Finally, Jason reached into his bag with shaky hands and placed a thick folder on the table. He pushed it forward, sliding it across the wood without lifting his eyes. "That's everything," he said quietly. I didn't touch the folder. I waited. Emily waited. His voice was barely more than a whisper, like a man confessing something he knew couldn't be undone. "Checks, receipts, proof of transfers. I sold what I could." He swallowed hard. The watch, the chain. Emily blinked slowly, not a tear in sight. "My gaming setup," he continued. "My shoes, the PS5, all of it." His fingers trembled as he tapped the folder. "It's all there, every dollar." I finally opened it. Bank checks, receipts from pawn shops, screenshots of cleared transfers, proof of sale, proof of desperation, proof that he'd actually done it. He'd ripped apart the flashy little empire he built out of lies and illusions. The gold chain he always fiddled with, gone. The overpriced shoes he bought to look successful, gone. The gaming setup he used to avoid real life, gone. All of it stripped away. I looked at him. He wasn't a villain in that moment, not a conman, not a smooth talker, just a man who finally had to face what he'd done. A man sitting in the wreckage of a life built on shortcuts. Emily looked at the folder next. She didn't reach for it, she just stared at it, at our savings reduced to paper slips and signatures. That money represented years of work, years of sacrifice, years of believing she was building a future with someone worthy. Now it lay between them like a pile of ashes. Jason opened his mouth, took a shaky breath and forced out, "Emily, I just want to say." She lifted her hand sharply, palm facing him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't tremble. She didn't lose control. She simply said one word, quiet and sharp enough to cut through the air. "Don't." That single word froze him. He closed his mouth, lowered his eyes, and nodded. Emily stood, slow, steady, deliberate. She turned to me. "Dad, let's go." I rose too, leaving the folder on the table. Jason looked up suddenly, panic flickering in his eyes. "You're not, aren't you gonna take it?" Emily answered before I could. "It's not about the money anymore." Jason stared at her, confused, desperate, lost. And in that moment I realized something. She was stronger now than he had ever been. We turned toward the door. And for the first time since the mess began, Emily walked with her shoulders back, her breath steady, her chin lifted, not in pride, not in arrogance, but in the quiet strength of someone who survived something meant to break them. Behind us, Jason stayed seated, alone at that little table with a folder full of receipts and the shattered remains of a life he built on lies. A life that finally caught up with him. A life he could no longer outrun. We didn't look back. Not once. Not for him. Not for the past. Not for the pain he caused. Because walking out wasn't just leaving the coffee shop. It was leaving him, the last of him, behind. And Emily didn't just walk out with me. She walked out free. Christmas Eve had been stolen from us, ripped apart by lies and manipulation, left hanging in the cold like a memory someone tore down and stepped on. And for a while I thought that would be the story of this year, the year that broke us, the year that twisted something inside both of us into a knot we couldn't untangle. But Christmas Day became something else entirely. Not perfect, not magical, not wrapped in shiny paper, but real, honest, earned. The kind of day you don't plan, but somehow end up needing more than you ever realized. We woke up slow. No alarms, no rush, no expectation. Just two people exhausted in different ways. I made coffee the same way I'd made it for years, too strong, with a splash of creamer that never makes it taste any better. And Emily sat at the table with her knees pulled up to her chest, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. Her eyes were puffy, her hair was messy, and she looked more like the little girl I raised than the grown woman who'd been fighting battles I never saw. For a long stretch, neither of us spoke. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the faint humming of the heater that clicked on and off whenever it felt like it. Then Emily softly said, "Dad, do you remember when Mom used to play that Christmas playlist she made?" I looked at her surprised. She didn't bring her mother up often, not because she didn't love her, but because losing her hurt too much to talk about. "Of course," I said, feeling a familiar ache rise in my chest. "She played it every year until we couldn't stand the songs anymore." Emily smiled, small and warm. She used to dance around the kitchen with the spatula like it was a microphone. "She did," I chuckled, "and she always messed up the lyrics." Emily laughed, a real laugh, not the forced one she'd been using to hide the pain. It was soft, cracked around the edges, but it was hers. The sound of my daughter coming back to life. After a moment she whispered, "Can we play it again, just for today?" I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the old speaker she'd bought me years ago, scrolled through the playlists, and there it was, Mom's Christmas Mix. When the first song started playing, something shifted in the room. Not sadness, not nostalgia, something like healing, like the weight that had been crushing both of us loosened just enough for us to breathe again. Emily stood up and walked to the kitchen. "Come on, Dad," she said softly, "help me cook." I followed her, and just like that, just like the years before life got complicated, we started reclaiming what was ours. We chopped vegetables side by side. She teased me for cutting onion slices too thick. I teased her for burning garlic like she always did. She stirred the gravy wrong. I oversalted the potatoes. We weren't perfect cooks. We never were, but somehow everything tasted better because we were doing it together. At one point, I wiped my hands on a towel and leaned on the counter, watching her. She moved slower than usual, almost cautiously, as if testing her own steps. But there was a steadiness in her now, a quiet determination in the way she carried herself. She was rebuilding piece by piece, breath by breath. Then she turned to me with eyes that glistened under the soft kitchen lights. Not tears of sadness, but something more tender, more fragile. "Dad," she said softly. I lifted my head. "Yeah, kiddo." She took a breath, deep, shaky, the kind that comes before someone says something they've been holding inside too long. "I'm sorry." My heart tightened. "For what?" "For letting him come between us," she whispered. "For believing him over you, for pushing you away, for Christmas Eve, for all of it. I'm so sorry." I walked toward her, shook my head slowly, and placed my hands on her shoulders. "Emily, don't." "No, Dad," she insisted, voice cracking. "I hurt you. I blocked your number. I let him isolate me. I let him make me think you were the enemy." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "I should have trusted you." I pulled her into my arms, tighter than I had in years, feeling her bury her face into my chest like she used to when the world felt too big. "Listen to me," I whispered into her hair. "What matters is what happened. What matters is you found your way back home." Her body shook with a silent sob, not the broken kind, not the painful kind, but the release of finally letting go. After a moment, I felt her smile against my chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for fighting for me." I cupped the back of her head gently, like I had when she was little. "You're my daughter," I said softly. "I'll always fight for you." She pulled back enough to look at me, wiping her face. "You didn't give up on me." "Never," I said. "Not once, not ever." From there, the day slowly filled with warmth. We ate too much food. We watched the same cheesy old Christmas movies we'd watched 100 times before, the ones where she used to fall asleep on my shoulder as a kid. She didn't fall asleep this time, but she leaned on me. That alone felt like a miracle. We didn't talk about Jason. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the money or the betrayal. We talked about her work, about her dreams, about the trips she always wanted to take but never made time for, about Mom and the recipes she never wrote down but always made perfectly, about life, real life, not the wreckage she had survived. And sometime late in the afternoon, as we sat on the couch with blankets wrapped around us, the tree lights flickering softly across the room, Emily whispered, "Dad, this is the best Christmas I've had in years." I didn't say anything at first. My throat tightened, but not from sadness, from gratitude, relief, joy, the kind that sneaks up on you when you think you've lost something forever and suddenly realize it's still there, still beating, still yours. I wrapped my arm around her and said, "Mine too, kiddo, mine too." And just like that, Christmas wasn't ruined. It wasn't lost. It wasn't stolen. It was rewritten, reclaimed, rebuilt, not by gifts, not by decorations, not by tradition, but by love, real, unbreakable love, rediscovered on the day we needed it most. Christmas Eve had been stolen from us, ripped apart by lies and manipulation, left hanging in the cold like a memory someone tore down and stepped on. And for a while I thought that would be the story of this year, the year that broke us, the year that twisted something inside both of us into a knot we couldn't untangle. But Christmas Day became something else entirely. Not perfect, not magical, not wrapped in shiny paper, but real, honest, earned. The kind of day you don't plan, but somehow end up needing more than you ever realized. We woke up slow. No alarms, no rush, no expectation. Just two people exhausted in different ways. I made coffee the same way I'd made it for years, too strong, with a splash of creamer that never makes it taste any better. And Emily sat at the table with her knees pulled up to her chest, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. Her eyes were puffy, her hair was messy, and she looked more like the little girl I raised than the grown woman who'd been fighting battles I never saw. For a long stretch, neither of us spoke. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the faint humming of the heater that clicked on and off whenever it felt like it. Then Emily softly said, "Dad, Do you remember when Mom used to play that Christmas playlist she made? I looked at her surprised. She didn't bring her mother up often, not because she didn't love her, but because losing her hurt too much to talk about. Of course, I said, feeling a familiar ache rise in my chest. She played it every year until we couldn't stand the songs anymore. Emily smiled, small and warm. She used to dance around the kitchen with the spatula like it was a microphone. She did, I chuckled, and she always messed up the lyrics. Emily laughed a real laugh, not the forced one she'd been using to hide the pain. It was soft, cracked around the edges, but it was hers. The sound of my daughter coming back to life. After a moment she whispered, "Can we play it again, just for today?" I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the old speaker she'd bought me years ago, scrolled through the playlists, and there it was, Mom's Christmas Mix. When the first song started playing, something shifted in the room. Not sadness, not nostalgia, something like healing. Like the weight that had been crushing both of us loosened just enough for us to breathe again. Emily stood up and walked to the kitchen. "Come on, Dad," she said softly, "help me cook." I followed her, and just like that, just like the years before life got complicated, we started reclaiming what was ours. We chopped vegetables side by side. She teased me for cutting onion slices too thick. I teased her for burning garlic like she always did. She stirred the gravy wrong. I oversalted the potatoes. We weren't perfect cooks. We never were, but somehow everything tasted better because we were doing it together. At one point, I wiped my hands on a towel and leaned on the counter, watching her. She moved slower than usual, almost cautiously, as if testing her own steps. But there was a steadiness in her now, a quiet determination in the way she carried herself. She was rebuilding piece by piece, breath by breath. Then she turned to me with eyes that glistened under the soft kitchen lights. Not tears of sadness, but something more tender, more fragile. "Dad," she said softly. I lifted my head. "Yeah, kiddo." She took a breath, deep, shaky, the kind that comes before someone says something they've been holding inside too long. "I'm sorry." My heart tightened. "For what?" "For letting him come between us," she whispered. "For believing him over you, for pushing you away, for Christmas Eve, for all of it. I'm so sorry." I walked toward her, shook my head slowly, and placed my hands on her shoulders. "Emily, don't." "No, Dad," she insisted, voice cracking. "I hurt you. I blocked your number. I let him isolate me. I let him make me think you were the enemy." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "I should have trusted you." I pulled her into my arms, tighter than I had in years, feeling her bury her face into my chest like she used to when the world felt too big. "Listen to me," I whispered into her hair. "What matters is what happened. What matters is you found your way back home." Her body shook with a silent sob, not the broken kind, not the painful kind, but the release of finally letting go. After a moment, I felt her smile against my chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for fighting for me." I cupped the back of her head gently, like I had when she was little. "You're my daughter," I said softly. "I'll always fight for you." She pulled back enough to look at me, wiping her face. "You didn't give up on me." "Never," I said. "Not once, not ever." From there, the day slowly filled with warmth. We ate too much food. We watched the same cheesy old Christmas movies we'd watched 100 times before, the ones where she used to fall asleep on my shoulder as a kid. She didn't fall asleep this time, but she leaned on me. That alone felt like a miracle. We didn't talk about Jason. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the money or the betrayal. We talked about her work, about her dreams, about the trips she always wanted to take but never made time for, about Mom and the recipes she never wrote down but always made perfectly, about life, real life, not the wreckage she had survived. And sometime late in the afternoon, as we sat on the couch with blankets wrapped around us, the tree lights flickering softly across the room, Emily whispered, "Dad, this is the best Christmas I've had in years." I didn't say anything at first. My throat tightened, but not from sadness, from gratitude, relief, joy. The kind that sneaks up on you when you think you've lost something forever and suddenly realize it's still there, still beating, still yours. I wrapped my arm around her and said, "Mine too, kiddo, mine too." And just like that, Christmas wasn't ruined. It wasn't lost. It wasn't stolen. It was rewritten, reclaimed, rebuilt, not by gifts, not by decorations, not by tradition, but by love, real, unbreakable love, rediscovered on the day we needed it most. People talk about betrayal like it's something sharp and sudden, like a single moment when the knife goes in, but that's not the truth I've come to understand. Real betrayal is quieter. It walks into your home dressed like love. It speaks in soft tones. It wins your trust with warm smiles and false promises. It waits until you're unguarded, until you've opened every door inside your heart, and then, when you're not looking, it breaks something sacred. And the cruelest part is that it never comes from strangers. A stranger can only disappoint you. It's the people you let close enough to know your fears, your dreams, your vulnerabilities, who carry the power to wound you in ways you never saw coming. My daughter learned that truth in the most painful way a person can, through the one person she believed would protect her future. But life, as bitter as it can be, has a strange way of delivering lessons wrapped inside heartbreak. Because the day she stumbled back onto my doorstep, the same doorstep where she once left for school wearing pigtails and a backpack covered in cartoon stickers, she wasn't just asking for help. She wasn't looking for revenge. She wasn't even looking for me to fix what had been shattered. She came searching for something deeper, something she didn't even have the words for: safety, truth. A place where her heart could fall apart without fear of being judged or discarded. She came home because the world had been cruel, and she needed one thing she knew she couldn't buy, couldn't fake, and couldn't lose: unconditional love. And that's the strange, heartbreaking, beautiful thing about being a parent. No matter how old your child becomes, whether they're 5 years old running through sprinklers or 25 walking through the front door with tears on their face, you never stop wanting to protect them. You never stop wanting to step between them and the world's sharp edges. You never stop wanting to make space for them at the table, even if they once pushed their chair back and walked away. When you're a parent, your love doesn't have an off switch. Your door doesn't lock. Your heart doesn't shut down. No matter what happens, no matter what mistakes they make, no matter who tries to drag them away, your instinct is always the same. Open the door, pull them into your arms, and tell them they're safe. When Emily stood outside my home on that freezing Christmas morning, shaking like a leaf and breaking apart right there on my doorstep, something inside me shifted. That doorstep became more than a piece of wood and metal. It became a symbol, a dividing line between the world that hurt her and the home that would heal her. On one side was the boy who lied to her, used her, and tried to take me away from her piece by piece. On the other side was the father who would stand in front of fire, bullets, storms, or heartbreak if it meant keeping her safe. And when she chose my side, when she knocked, trembling and terrified, that was the moment I realized something important. Love doesn't protect you from being broken, but it does give you somewhere to land. People say that when someone breaks your heart, you come out stronger. I don't know if that's true. I think you come out different, a little wiser, a little tougher, a little more careful about who you let into your world. But strength comes from what happens after, the rebuilding, the healing, the moments where you learn to trust again, even when every part of you is afraid to. And healing almost never happens alone. It happens in the presence of someone who won't walk away when the pain gets messy. Someone who doesn't flinch when the truth hurts. Someone who sees you shattered and still says, "Come here, sit down, I'm not going anywhere." That's what family is supposed to be. People think family is blood. I've learned it's much more than that. Blood gives you relation. Loyalty gives you family. Love gives you home. And when someone tries to tear your family apart, whether through lies, manipulation, or poison affection, you don't just stand by and watch. You step in. You fight. You raise your voice, your hands, your heart, whatever it takes to pull the person you love back into the light. When someone tries to break your child, you help them rebuild. When someone tries to isolate them, you show them they were never alone. When someone steals from them money, trust, years, you stand beside them as they take it back. And when someone shatters their heart, you remind them of a truth stronger than betrayal. What breaks can heal. What leaves can return. What falls apart can be put back together, piece by piece, day by day, with patience and love and the kind of support that never wavers. Our Christmas didn't happen the way we imagined. It wasn't wrapped in lights or carols or laughter, not at first. But by the end of that day, as Emily sat beside me on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders and peace returning slowly to her eyes, I realized something incredible. We had rewritten Christmas. We had turned a day meant for heartbreak into a day of rebirth, a second chance. A reminder that no matter how far she wandered, no matter who tried to pull her away, no matter what storm she faced, she always had a home to return to. And that's the lesson our doorstep taught us, the lesson I'll carry with me until the last breath leaves my lungs. The people who truly love you will never make you choose between them and your family. They won't isolate you. They won't control you. They won't steal your voice, your confidence, your joy. They won't dim your light just so theirs can shine. Real love doesn't take, it gives. It builds, it protects, it stays. And as long as I'm alive, as long as these hands can open a door and these arms can hold my daughter, she will never face a closed door again. Not from me, not ever. Because love, real, unconditional love, doesn't close doors. It opens them. It keeps them open. It lights the porch, clears the path, and waits with patience and hope. Because that's what family does. That's what a father does. That's what I will do for her for every Christmas, every morning, every heartbreak, every joy, always.